big star out of me. Make a film about a man who's sad and lonely, and all I gotta do is act naturally. Well, I'll bet you I'm gonna be a big star. Might win an Oscar, you can never tell. The movie's gonna make me a big star.
Hi, welcome to Meet Me at the Movies. I am Noel Manning II. We appreciate you hanging out with us right here on C19 TV. And if you're listening to the podcast, that's on WGWG.org. And as always, however you decide to spend time with us, we just want to thank you. We know you've got other things you can do with your time, but if you choose the time to be with us, we can say nothing more than just thank you, thank you, thank you. Special guest today, we got Thomas Manning. He's not a special guest. Thomas Manning's been hanging out with us for a while now. Thomas, good to see you, buddy. Hope you're doing okay.
Oh, definitely. Thanks for having me, as always.
Yep. And Greg Tillman, he's still doing some research. So Greg is not with us today, and we have not seen Tim Foster in quite a while. We've got some search parties out there looking for Tim, but we do have a special guest. And as I've been saying all along during, it seems like forever now, as we've been kind of going through the coronavirus and even coming through the tail end of it and thinking about what else is going on, we've really been able to find ways to connect with other film critics and filmmakers, and Zoom has been amazing for that as far as an opportunity is concerned. And a good friend of mine from years gone by, Adam Long, is our guest today. And Adam is he's a film critic, a longtime film critic, for Focus newspaper. So Adam, I tell you, man, we're glad to have you. You Focus newspaper. You're also a correspondent for Movie Geeks United, a former co-host for Cinema Scene, and also a member of the North Carolina Film Critics Association. Adam, you and I met years ago at the Reel to Reel Film Festival, and we kind of hit it off there, and that's kind of been our, at least, we try to get together more than once or twice a year, but when we can't, we always try to connect there and have lunch or supper or something just to get together. So Adam, so glad you're here, buddy.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Very, very glad to be here. And I always enjoy chatting it up with you. And of course, I've watched Thomas grow up, and he was, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 years old when we first started.
That's about right.
As a man. So look what the years hath brought.
Yeah. And now even Thomas is a member of the North Carolina Film Critics Association. So
fantastic too.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Well, Adam, really, really glad to have you, man. Looking forward to spending some time talking with you as well. And I know you and I've talked before, and your first film experience was this disaster film called The Towering Inferno. You're a big fan of Brian De Palma. You are drawn to drama films, and you also you just love films altogether, but you're really drawn to films that have story and that have stories that you can relate to. So let's talk about where that love of film began with you, and what made you decide to continue to follow it and look at it critically.
Well, it's funny because as a kid, and we've talked about this before, escapism was kind of the name of the game for me as a kid. I loved horror films growing up. Big thing with me. Still is. I still enjoy horror, a good horror film. But I was in my early 20s when I saw a film called Frankie and Johnny. I know it was kind of a commercial, Hollywood, based on a play by the recently deceased Terrence McNally, unfortunately a victim of COVID. And he wrote the screenplay. It was directed by Gary Marshall, the follow-up to Pretty Woman. And this was a film it was basically a study about two lonely people, and it was an ode to loneliness. And I don't know, the night I saw it, I was sitting there in the theater by myself on a Monday night, and I was kind of feeling the same vibe that the film was. And I thought, this is, I don't know, I'm feeling something here. This is an examination of the problems that real people have, as opposed to a lot of the escapism that I had been investing myself in up to that point. And I don't know, it just kind of was a catalyst, I guess you would say, and kind of an unlikely catalyst. From that point on, I started getting more serious about film and looking into the filmmakers of my past who came along before I was on this shuffling around on this mortal coil. And I took an interest in what had come before, and some of the filmmakers who were making films at that time. Oliver Stone was a big thing for me around that time, because I really he was making the kind of films that were speaking to me, that were pretty serious and about pretty serious issues. This was around the time of Born on the 4th of July and JFK, which came out that same calendar year. So all of this was kind of happening at the same time. And so that was kind of what the jumping off point that led me to seeing cinema for more than just, having a good time. And I guess I saw probably Michael Moore's Roger and Me somewhere along in that line, which kind of opened my mind to documentary filmmaking.
Yeah.
Also kind of, and another one I remember was the Thin Blue Line, directed by Errol Morris, which actually led to the exoneration of the subject of the film. It was a man who was wrongfully imprisoned, and he wound up having his sentence commuted as a result of the film. So these things, all at once, just kind of, I said, well, film can be life-changing.
Yes.
And, I grew up seeing, superhero films, Superman, of course, and all of that stuff, and nothing wrong with it. I think Superman is still the greatest comic book adaptation. I'll stand by that one. And I love those types of movies when they're done well, and they don't pander, shall we say, or insult my intelligence. But I started getting serious, and so I guess that's when the passion for me.
Yeah.
It's about the films of the struggles of the human being, I guess you would say.
Right.
We have as humans. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at human nature and looking at the things that challenge us to think and look within ourselves. I know, Thomas, you had a question I think you wanted to ask Adam. You've known him for a long time, but this is your first chance to really spend some time with him as a fellow film critic. So I know you might have a question or two you want to throw out. So I want to give you a chance right here.
Yeah, so it definitely looks like empathy within filmmaking is something that really draws you in. And I was just curious, what are some of the specific, like, thematic foundations within film that really draws you in to look at it from an extremely empathetic perspective?
Well, I think trying to find meaning in life, and trying to find fulfillment, trying to find the human connection. I guess those are all themes that resonate with me. Trying to find one's place in the world, some sort of feeling of belonging and acceptance. Those are all things that strongly resonate for me, because those have been struggles for me, to be quite honestly. It's most of my life I have struggled to find places. Growing up in a small town, and you're a tremendous film buff, especially in the Deep South, it's not really the easiest thing. In a lot of ways, you feel like an outsider. I know I did. There weren't many people like me. Let's put it that way. And you just feel like you're odd, and that nobody really gets you. And so those are themes that I, identified with growing up with as a child and as a teenager. Now as I've gotten older and I've gotten to befriend some of the filmmakers and some of the actors who have participated in some of my favorite films, and fans of their work as well. There's a big circle out there that I feel a part of. I do feel acceptance. But yeah, those are things that are very that resonate very strongly with me. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think one of the things that's interesting, you talk about kind of being in a small town, and you and I both grew up in small towns, and we grew up before there were opportunities to do things like this, to do Zoom interactions with other film critics and other filmmakers. Before there was a thing called Letterboxd, or the internet for that matter, where you could connect and you could find connections with others that have the same sense of wanting to belong or belonging, and understanding and feeling and questioning and asking thoughts relating to cinema and relating to film beyond just the popcorn flick. And Thomas has been fortunate enough that he's grown up with with the dad who has been connected to it. And, Thomas has been going to film screenings, these early screenings, probably since he can remember. And, we've been watching these movies and going to these films. And so, he's been sitting on Critics Row, since he was a young kid. And like you said, you've known him for years. And so, for Thomas to be able to now be at that point where he's interacting with other film critics as, somebody who's, of course, gaining stuff from mentors out there, but he's also on the same, the same stage that they are. And so I think I wish these opportunities that are here now were there when you and I were growing up, but we found a way. We found a way.
Eventually.
Yeah,
Halfway through my life, at least I hope I'm halfway. I hope I'm not at the end, but I'd like to think I'm halfway through my life. So, and I found a way that kind of, where I feel some sort of acceptance. And so, maybe I can enjoy the rest of it if, assuming I've got some time ahead of me.
Well, let's hope.
We're hoping.
Yeah, well, we at least hope you have another 14, 15 minutes, at least.
Yeah. Or this could get really interesting if I die on
really
camera.
could, yeah, really
For
could.
the ages.
Well, I want to go back to Brian De Palma. Thomas has become a fan of some of De Palma's work, and he's been able to see some of that as well. What is it because I remember you and I've talked, but what is it that draws you to the work of De Palma?
Well, again, I think his films are very emotional. There's a lot of they explore the kind of the dark side of people, I guess. Blowout in particular is a film that's probably my favorite because it's about a guy who wants to do the right thing. He wants to expose this conspiracy where the governor has been killed, and he wants to get the truth out there, and all the forces are lining up against him, and no matter how hard he tries, it's just too much. And the movie ends on a very, spoiler alert, I guess I should say, but the film ends on a very downbeat note where he's lost everything, including somebody that really meant something to him on an emotional level. All of his evidence is gone, and basically the forces are stacked against him, and that kind of thing it's just a powerful thing to, I think, and of course De Palma's technique, I think, is another thing that really attracts me to his work. Immediately, I can remember seeing Carrie in my teens, and I saw it when I was 9 years old when it made its CBS television debut way back when. Well, that's been a long time ago, obviously. I wasn't paying attention to technique when I was in third grade, but then when it became available on video cassette, and I was able to get the cassette of it and watch it in the late 80s, I really started picking. I thought, wow, this is just such an incredibly technically proficient film. And I had seen a lot of De Palma's work up to that point, but really didn't take note of the technique. And the technique in his films is what he knows how to play an audience, or emotionally, on an emotional level. Like in Dressed to Kill is another example where the Angie Dickinson character, you expect her to be the main character, and he takes a page out of Hitchcock's notebook in Psycho, and he kills her halfway through the film.
Yeah.
And so, I like how he does play the emotions of the audience and does it in an interesting way. A lot of people have accused him, of course, over the years of being a Hitchcock rip-off artist, and I think he took the themes that Hitchcock kind of he took some of the ideas that Hitchcock started, and he took them to the next level. I think he took them to a place where Hitchcock couldn't take them because of the ratings codes and all of that.
Well, and also,
ratings system, all that.
Yeah, and technology, and I mean, as you move forward and look at the changes in filmmaking, there are more things you can do as you go through the years. So I think, to me, I think that's whenever you can go back and say, okay, that person inspired me, and I'm going to continue what they've done and try to do it in a different way, maybe not necessarily a better way, but maybe a way that can build on it. I think that's awesome, to build on the foundation of others. I mean, that says a whole lot. Well, we're at a midway point intermission. We're going to take an intermission. We're going to come back with Adam Long and Thomas Manning. I'm Noel T. Manning II. You are watching Meet Me at the Movies on C19 TV. And if you're listening to the podcast version, that's through WGWG.org. When we come back, we're going to talk maybe about some favorite directors of Adam's that maybe he wouldn't mind having direct his life story. And Thomas and I are going to get in on that hot topic as well. Adam, glad you're here, and glad for all of our listeners and our viewers for spending time with us right here on Meet Me at the Movies. We'll be right back after this quick intermission.
They're gonna put me in the movies. They're gonna make a big star out of me.
Just want to let you know, I care.
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 We care about you at Cleveland Community College because we're a family. With all the recent changes that have occurred across our nation and the world, we've been forced to make changes to our schedule and to the daily operations of our college. And we want to make sure that you're able to stay on track with your courses. CCC's care team is ready to help you.
Be a part of building the future. Be a welder. The welding technology program at Cleveland Community College prepares you with the science, the technology, and the skills to be a successful welder. Experienced instructors using state-of-the-art equipment train students using industry standard skills developed through classroom training and practical application. Successful graduates are in high demand and are employed as entry-level technicians in welding and metalworking industries. Learn more about Cleveland Community College at 704-669-4077.
These lines, like the creases in my father's hands, show the hard work and sacrifices of a line worker. These lines are the connections my father helped build between people, businesses, and organizations. They tell the story of how we invested in ourselves. We're public power, and these lines are our lines.
They're gonna put me in the movies. They're gonna make a big star out of me.
Welcome back to Meet Me in the Movies. I am Noel T. Manning II, hanging out with you right here on C19 TV. And if you're watching this online, you can always stream the show C19.tv and then listen to the podcast through WGWG.org. I am Noel T. Manning II, hanging out with Thomas Manning, fellow North Carolina film critic, and then Adam Long. Adam Long, also our guest right here from Focus Newspapers. Also, Adam is a correspondent with Movie Geeks United and a former co-host for Cinema Scene. Adam, good to have you, man. Thanks for spending the first part of the show giving us some good background on you, the things you like, what you're drawn to. Well, I do have one quick question before we dive into the hot topic. You mentioned kind of movies about life, movies that make you think, movies that make you look at yourself, things that you're drawn to. Was there anything that's come out over the past couple of years that's just really resonated with you that you said, yeah, that's a film I will go back to?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I want to give some props to a director that a lot of people aren't really familiar with his work, but I think this guy is a real saint. And I mean that. He's a real saint, the work that he's done. He's been making films very quietly for about 50 years. His name's Ken Loach. And he won the Cannes Film Festival Award in 2016 for a film called I, Daniel Blake. And all of his films are about the struggles of the working class and the lower class, the people on the lower rungs of society. I, Daniel Blake was a fantastic film about a man in his late 50s who had a heart attack and has been instructed not to work, but yet he has to apply for jobs in order to get his benefits, but he can't accept any of the jobs. And so it's about all the red tape he has to go through to get basically what our society should be providing for him. He has made another film since then, and it's funny, he retired in 2014, and then the rise of the Labour Party and the conservative wing in Great Britain urged, he decided to get out of retirement and come back in. He's made 2 films since retiring.
Wow.
He's now 83 years old, and he made a film in 2019. It's getting ready to come out on Blu-ray. I recently saw it, and it's called Sorry We Missed You. And this is a fantastic, it's an incredible sucker punch of a film about, and it's basically about this gig economy that we're in right now, where people are taking jobs doing, basically in the case of this film, this guy's a delivery driver, and he decides to buy a van so he can be a FedEx type driver. And then he realizes he's way in over his head because of all the responsibilities that entails. And it's just about the horrors of the struggles of the working class trying to get ahead and this film is just it's incredible.
Okay, awesome.
I would highly recommend Sorry We Missed You is a recent one from just the last year that's fantastic. So
awesome. And so if you're going to give that a rating as A to F, like on the report card scale, what would you give that? Solid A plus?
Oh yeah, A plus. I gave it 5 stars on the letterbox. So it's
awesome.
It's a sucker punch, but don't expect don't expect sunshine, lollipops, and roses because it's not that kind of movie.
Well, it is not a ride off into the sunset with that film.
Boy.
Well, talking about directors, we're going to dive into our hot topic, and the hot topic is if a film was made on your life, who would you have direct that film and why? And we will see how many of these we can get to. I've got a list of 3 right off the bat that I'm going to share, but we'll do one at a time. Thomas, I'm going to let you dive in, and then Adam, I'll dive in, and then I'll let you be thinking about who you'd like to direct your life. Thomas, go for it, buddy.
Yeah, well, if you take a look at my T-shirt, then you might get a little bit of a hint. I'm going with Robert Zemeckis, of course, famous for the Back to the Future trilogy, as well as a whole host of other films in the past 3 to 4 decades. And I think specifically looking to the Back to the Future comparison, I've always felt that personally I belong in like the 70s or the 80s or the 60s even. So why not have Robert Zemeckis make a movie about me, sending me back in time? And that's just an idea that's always really stuck with me. And that would be just an absolute blast to be a part of a film production directed by a legend like him. And he's one of those, he always finds a way to push the envelope in regard to the incorporation of different technology, like how he's used animation in some of his films, like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. He used really interesting motion capture techniques with like Polar Express, and I'd love to be a part of one of his stories and then to be a part of a different pathway of technology and filmmaking that he uses.
Awesome, good choice, Thomas. As long as he's not putting you in the role of Ebenezer Scrooge, I'm sure that that's one you're gonna stay away from. You're not really happy about that movie for some reason.
Yeah, I think that one, I was probably 7 or 8 years old when we saw a little Ebenezer Scrooge like turn into a little mouse or something. It turned into like a little 1-inch man, and that just kind of scarred me for life. Yeah.
Well, we'll blame your dad for that. We'll definitely blame your dad for that. Well, if I were going to have a director direct my life, the first one that comes to mind is Opie Cunningham. Opie Taylor, Richie Cunningham, Ron Howard is who I'm talking about. Ron Howard, I've always loved him. I mean, going back to the Andy Griffith days, then watched him grow up by seeing him on Happy Days, and then turning into this director that really could do the kinds of things he wanted to do, and he had some great opportunities. And what I love about him is he has an incredible attention to detail. He loves redheads, and so I can't fault him for that, because I've got some redheads in my family, and I used to be one with a whole lot more of the red hair. I also love his ability to make stories that may seem simple to others worthwhile, and he brings out that worthwhile aspect. And he can take snapshots of history. He can take these really creative roles. I mean, I go back and think about Cocoon and some of the things he did with this movie that nobody really thought this movie was going to be worthwhile, and it was. And then he also takes chances, and he's not afraid to pick up where other people left off. And so Ron Howard is definitely on my list and would be one of my first go-to directors for directing my life. All right, Adam, what have you got on yours, buddy?
Well, goodness gracious. I have to go back to what Thomas was saying, though. I'm a big fan of Robert Zemeckis as well, and I think people tend to forget those early comedies he made, like I Want to Hold Your Hand and Used Cars. And if I was going to be in a comedy, if you're going to make a comedy out of my life, I would go for Robert Zemeckis also. So anyway, but no, I would have to go with Billy Wilder, the great Billy Wilder, because Billy Wilder was a director who made movies from the 30s all the way up into the 1980s, which is pretty amazing when you think about that. And his movies could be sometimes serious. He made the first film about alcoholism, which won the Academy Award The Lost Weekend. But his films could also be hysterically funny, as in Some Like It Hot. But then they could also be somewhere in the middle, like The Apartment, where his films could be, there's a touch of seriousness along with the humor. And he was very cynical in his outlook, which I can be sometimes. I'm not saying that's a good way to look at the world. I'm not recommending it, but it just is what it is, and I can't deny it. I tend to do that sometimes a little too much, and I have to stop myself. So the cynicism and the romanticism, I'm a big romantic, so and so Billy Wilder was as well. So he's a perfect, seems to be able to capture perfectly the qualities of romanticism and cynicism in equal parts, and so Billy Wilder would probably be my go-to guy.
Great choice, great choice. All right, Thomas, you have somebody else on your list.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with a close collaborator of Robert Zemeckis, Steven Spielberg, who I think we've all heard of him once or twice, and I think I love the way he is able to direct child actors and just kind of combine reality with their imaginations. If I could, go back to when I was little, it would have been just so awesome to be directed by Spielberg in one of his movies, like he's done with something like E.T. or with Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and just being a part of something like that would just be unforgettable.
So, since you've mentioned Spielberg, I'm going to mention a recent filmmaker that you and I both have spent some time with and fallen in love with his work, Taika Waititi. Love this guy. He is fun. His sense of humor combined with his willingness to explore a variety of topics really just brings me into what he does. He's not afraid to take chances, and I wouldn't mind somebody taking a chance with my life and looking at it through maybe their lens and the way they saw it. So Taika Waititi is my pick for also a director. And Adam, we got 1 minute, so if you want to dive in with one more, go for it, buddy.
Oh, sure. Alexander Payne would be my other go-to guy. There's a tinge of melancholy that runs through all of his films, and there's a tinge of melancholy that runs through me as well. So, and wistfulness, a combination of that. So, and he captures that perfectly in films like Sideways and About Schmidt. So, yeah, there's my guy.
Adam Long, our guest right here on Meet Me at the Movies. We appreciate that. Where can people find you, Adam, if they are looking for you and want to connect with you?
Oh, sure. You can go to focusnewspaper.com, and there's a tab up there that says Adam Long Movie Reviews. You'll see it. You can also go to moviegeeksunited.net, where my producing partner, Jamie Duvall, and I are putting up content on a weekly basis. We just recently remastered our critically acclaimed Kubrick series, which is really, really good stuff. If you're a Kubrick fan, we basically contacted as many people as we could who were still alive, who participated in his films, and we take one of his films in each episode, and we go in depth with as many of the surviving players that we could find, and we got a lot of nice press on that, and I think people really would love that. So those have been remastered in with better sound, and we've just reissued those. So.
Awesome. Adam, we appreciate you being here, man. Glad we could do this. Really glad to see you always. And Thomas, good to see you. And for all of those who spent time with us this week on Meet Me at the Movies, we thank you. We thank you so much. I'll leave you with a quote of the week, as I always do. This comes from Apollo 13, a Ron Howard film. Gentlemen, it's been a privilege flying with you. So until next time, I'm Noel T. Manning II for Meet Me at the Movies, and all the cast and crew here, we thank you. And that is a wrap.
Happy train.